Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's business meeting presented by the American Vein and Lymphatic Society. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. All attendees are muted so we don't pick up any background noise during the program, and the webinar will be recorded and available for viewing. You'll notice a Q&A box on your screen. You can type your questions into this box and it will be added to a queue. The Q&A portion of the webinar will take place at the end. Our presenters this evening are AVLS President, Dr. Mark Meissner, AVLS Past President, Dr. Marlin Schul, AVLS President-elect, Dr. Kathleen Gibson, Secretary, Dr. Satish Vayuvegula, Treasurer, Dr. Stephen Daugherty, and Board of Directors, Drs. Zoe Deol, John Blebea, Steve Elias, and Chris Pittman. I'll now turn over the presentation to our first speaker, Dr. Mark Meissner. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Brian. Can everybody see my slides?
Just the blue screen, Mark.
How about now?
There we go.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining us this evening for the business meeting. I think we have some exciting things to announce this evening, as well as to go over the general health of the society, which I think is quite good. And really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us. This is sort of our first full year back post-pandemic. And I think we can say that despite the lull during the pandemic, we've had a number of accomplishments in 2022 and have continued to move the whole field of venous and lymphatic disease forward. If you looked at our primary missions as far as education, we had a successful meeting in Denver in 2021, as well as the successful AVLS review courses in June of 2022. We're working on expanding our immersive education offerings, and we've had an ongoing webinar series with about 11 webinars over the past year that many of you probably also participated in. As far as advocacy, at least from an AVLS standpoint, we were successful in raising over $100,000 from our members, and to some degree of success, not a complete success with the final rule in 2022, the clinical labor update, which is still an ongoing problem. Weren't completely successful but I think we were successful in mobilizing our members to be involved in this very important issues to all of our practices. And Robert White has just recently said in earlier this week, robust response to the 2023 final rule. As far as research goes, I'm really happy to announce that the phase 1 guidelines were finally approved by the last society today. And the first phase of the guidelines, which will consist of 4 guidelines, will be probably online published in the next 2 weeks in the Journal of Vascular Surgery, Veins and Lymphatics, because it won't require an editorial review since it's already had a very thorough review. And phase 2, which is going to be a much expanded version, is currently making really good progress with about 12 questions in 4 separate areas. And as far as the pro registry goes, Marlin's done a great job in getting the venous ulcer and anterior accessory saphenous projects completed. We'll go through some of this in a little more detail. So now to just review our agenda, we're going to, Zoe's going to give the membership report, followed by Satish talking about our finances. Stephen Daugherty is going to give the secretary and advocacy reports. John Blebea will give the research report. Steve Elias, the education report. And then very exciting, Dr. Zoe Deol will give an update on the VLM Workgroup. And then Chris will talk about the annual Congress update. Kathy Gibson will talk about the UIP meeting scheduled for Miami in 2023. Dr. Schul will give us the foundation report, and then I'm going to conclude by overgoing our Great Expectations strategic plan for the next 5 years. And so with that, I'll stop sharing and turn it over to Zoe.
Thank you, Mark. Let me just pull up my screen here. Okay, can you see my screen yet?
Yes.
we have you now.
Okay, got it. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to give the report on the membership. So our member recruitment efforts have focused on converting non-member attendees from the annual Congress, live courses, and online education and webinars. These efforts resulted in 346 new members recruited in 2022. 238 members dropped due to non-payment of dues, while overall member growth has actually slowed due to the pandemic, causing early retirements, closing practices. However, we continue to grow our membership year over year despite that, with a net gain of 108 members in 2022. A large part of our membership growth was from non-physician members, 92 net gain membership, and in-training physicians in residency and fellowship programs with a 74 member net gain. The physician membership was reduced from 821 to 789, so a 32 member net loss. And international membership was reduced from 143 to 121 with a 22 membership net loss. The breakdown of the membership categories show that nearly half of our members are US physicians, followed by our fastest growing groups with non-physician or allied members at 25% and in-training members at 14%. The member by specialty, we have a breakdown of our membership was pretty well balanced, with 29% from vascular surgery, 18% from general surgery, 14% from interventional radiology, 12% cardiology, and 12% family medicine. The non-physician specialty breakdown shows a 38% are from the allied health for nurses, occupational therapists, and physical therapists. 30% are from our advanced practice providers, such as NPs and PAs, and then 18% are registered or vascular technologists. So just going back to addressing that physician member breakdown, with the biggest jump being in the in-training physicians, I think our mentorship program is going to have significant impact here. Those are the up and coming new members that we want to convert to physician members once they've completed their training. And in order to do that, we have our annual mentor program, which was designed to facilitate professional growth by allowing them to tap into the experience and resources of our more established physicians and health professionals. So AVLS launched this initiative at the 2021 annual Congress, and it was highly successful. And we now have over 50 participants. And we have expanded it to include year-long programs in the 2022 year into the 2023 year. The year-long programs included a webinar that was to help new members understand how to make the most of their AVLS membership. We'll also include checking in regularly between the mentor and the mentee throughout the year so that the mentee can have questions answered about their professional practice, and also possibly promoting this new member reception that we're having at the annual Congress, and having our mentors and mentees attend some of the events at Congress together. And so we just want to welcome our new members who are on this webinar. We're hoping that you will come to that new member reception. You'll volunteer to serve on a committee. You can also get on the MAC, the My AVLS community, and post. You can participate in the mentor program, and you can also become published. If you'd like, you can join our research committee and use our ProVenus registry to publish some scientific articles. You can write a newsletter or AVLS magazine. You can attend any of the webinars. There's 10 to 12 free webinars throughout the year, and network throughout the Congress. So hope to see you all in New Orleans at our reception on Wednesday evening, the 12th. At I think it's something, what is it, Dean? You can probably.
It's called the 8 Block. It's right in the middle of the lobby of the Hyatt Hotel.
Yep, hope to see you all there. And that's it for the membership report.
Great, thank you, Zoe. And with that, we'll move on to Satish Vayuvegula, who will give the finance report. Satish.
All right, can you guys hear me? Let me share my screen here. Okay. Can you guys see
Yes.
the report? Okay. All right. So thank you, everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and give us our annual treasurer's report. Thank you for Brian for the introduction, but for those of you that aren't aware, Stephen Daugherty is our secretary, and I took over as the treasurer at the beginning of last Congress. So hence the reason why I'm giving this report instead of Stephen, if you were looking forward to seeing him. Let's get started here. All right, so first slide, we're going to go over our revenue for the year. So the foundation and individual giving ended up being on budget. If you look down here, it's at $745,000 compared to $750,000 for our budget, and a lot of that was in part due to the individual giving with the Stop CMS effort. So for all the donations that came in there, that kept us on budget for our giving. Some things from last year, though, our Congress revenue was significantly below plan, and a lot of this was due to the pandemic, as well as the fact that our Congress attendance was only 65 to 70% of our pre-pandemic levels, which accounted for the deficit compared to what we budgeted for the annual Congress last year. Next slide. So continuing on with revenue here, our research revenue was not realized, and that's and I'll say not realized, but it will be because this is just delayed. This is due to the embolized trial for pelvic venous disease that has not started yet. The good news is that it doesn't have a direct impact because the expenses are also delayed associated with that project. So that's the big difference there in terms of the research revenue not being recognized. Membership dues were up due to accruals rolling over from the prior year, as well as a total increase in membership, as Zoe had mentioned. One thing to note that is that this was mainly due to non-physician memberships, and we're going to be focusing on how do we increase our physician membership as well over the coming year. Our product sales increased significantly in the second half of the year due to the SVP and the CEAP workbooks, so they brought some of that revenue back, as well as the ePass digital education subscriptions and the new immersive education courses that were all released in the early part of 2022. As I mentioned before, our big focus and concern is the decreased physician memberships, although our overall membership is up compared to prior year, and we'll continue to monitor the revenue accordingly, and the membership committee will be actively working on how do we make sure that we increase this number. As far as our expenses, the personal expenses were well managed and they were below budget, as well as all the operating expenses were also below budget. Part of that was due to lower attendance in Congress, and so there was less expenses associated with it, as well as Dean doing a great job of managing and controlling our expenses due to the revenue shortfalls. Overall, we ended up with a slight deficit for the fiscal year, $44,336. In terms of accounts payable, our current accounts payable are $224,000. Over 90 days is $125,000, which might seem like a lot, but this is decreased considerably compared to years past. So we've done a great job of chipping away at that overall outstanding debt and bringing it down. And then our accounts receivables, we have membership dues. We're starting to get Congress 2022 revenue coming in, as well as we have some outstanding revenue for the CME coming in. Cash flow continues to be a continual concern. Dean is watching that closely and does a great job of making sure that we're able to maintain payroll and adjust payments as needed to be able to meet the operations of the society as a whole. Congress 2022 and World Congress 2023, the UIP, are going to be critical to the financial stability of the society and our ability to invest in the new initiatives and personnel that we've identified in the proposed strategic plan, which will be discussed later. As far as Congress for 2022, registration is behind where we expected at this point. So if you know people who are planning to attend, please reach out to them and make sure that they get registered so we can continue to grow that number and get close to what our revenue goals are. Okay. And so keynotes here, we, overall, we reduced the headcount in the office by 1, and this was due to outsourcing some of our staff accounting and our bookkeeping to a firm called Profit Matters. It's a projected savings of approximately $35,000 annually, and so this will continue to help in terms of controlling costs. We've contracted a new firm, Desmond and Ahern. They are currently conducting our audits for 2019, 2020, and 2021. And then we're also looking at alternative office facilities to reduce overhead expenses due to the flex scheduling of our Chicago-based staff and the reduction in member activities. We don't need as much space to be able to provide the services that we are from Dean and the home office area. So that is basically the financial update. Any questions? Please feel free to email them in. Thank you.
Thank you, Satish. And with that, we'll move to Dr. Stephen Daugherty, who is going to present back-to-back the Secretary's report and the Advocacy report.
All right, Satish, can you take yours off the screen? There we go. All right, thank you. I have served for the past year as secretary. I served for 3 years prior to that as treasurer. And we'll discuss a little bit about things that the board has done recently that are important. Some of our non-physician membership recognized that we had a fellowship category for physicians who had made extraordinary contributions to the society. And we saw this as an opportunity to recognize some of the non-physicians and came up with the laureate category membership. Now, the membership committee worked on this and brought it to the board. And then the board acted upon this with bylaws changes, which they can do because we're expanding rights for membership rather than restricting them. But we created the laureate category for non-physicians who have demonstrated a special commitment to our mission and to our vision of the AVLS and who acted upon that commitment with their time and their energy. We also saw a need to create a new board level standing committee, which we titled Fellowship Development, Accreditation, and Oversight, as we saw the need for us to take the lead in helping develop fellowships in venous and lymphatic medicine, which we view as critical to our being able to get ABMS recognition eventually. So the qualifications for laureate member, the non-physician senior members, advanced practice providers, vascular technologists, lymphedema therapists, the requirements which are listed include those that you would expect from people in this category. We are going to require an RPHS for the vascular technologist because we thought that was so important for that group. There's an experiential pathway, but key is, this is true for fellowship members as well, but it requires unanimous approval of each individual by the board of directors.
Dr. Daugherty?
Yeah.
If you're meaning to share your slides, we're not seeing those currently.
You're not seeing them. Well, I clicked the share, so I don't know why you're not seeing them.
But you look great.
You see me, but not the slides.
We now have your Safari screen, Zoom, but not the slides yet.
Do you see them now?
We do. Run your presentation, please. Very good.
Okay, you see them. Good. Well, I don't know the problem, but here we go. Well, you heard part of this. The board of directors created the laureate category for membership to recognize non-physician members who've contributed to the society. And we've developed the board level standing committee, fellowship development, accreditation, and oversight. The qualifications for the laureate category require 5 years of membership, which qualifies one for senior membership in the society. But this is created for advanced practice providers, vascular technologists, and lymphedema therapists. There are requirements for appropriate credentials for each of these groups, and there's an experiential pathway. But just like for the fellows, there's a requirement for unanimous approval by the board of directors. To the people applying for the fellowship in the society have been the appropriate people, and all of them that have submitted, in my experience, have been approved. But it's the kind of thing where you want people that really contribute to the society. The Fellowship Accreditation Oversight Committee is described now in our bylaws in Article 5. It's a board level committee, which means that all the members are members of the board. These are the key responsibilities of the committee. And then there are supporting advisory committees. And advisory committees are led by board members, but are staffed with non-board members as well as board members, so that we bring in a lot of experience and insight from throughout our membership. So there's a VLM specialty work group. Zoe Deol and Jeff Schoonover co-chair that, and that's the group you'll hear more about later today. There's a program development and recruitment group, and there's an accreditation oversight advisory committee as well. We felt that there was no need for the communications committee to be a standing committee of the board, and decided to make that an advisory committee, meaning we could bring in non-board members to serve on that group, but it reports to the membership standing committee. As far as elections go, we will not be saying goodbye to Mark Meissner. He will be on the board for 2 more years as past president. Marlin Schul, after serving for many years, will rotate off the board as past president. But our incoming president is Kathleen Gibson. Now, she was elected 2 years ago as president-elect and has served those 2 years. And she will automatically become president after the next meeting in October. Kathleen does not need much of an introduction. She's been very involved in the society, and anyone who's been involved at all knows who she is. She served at multiple levels. Satish Vayuvegula has been nominated and affirmed by the board of directors for the position of president-elect, which means that if the membership votes in the positive for Satish, he will become president-elect for 2 years, and then will serve 2 years as president, and then 2 more years as past president. So he's getting into the saddle for a lot of service. He's already done a lot of service, which got him where he is. John Blebea has less experience in leadership in the AVLS. He's a past president of the American Venous Forum, but he's been extremely involved the last several years with our activities and has been a critical person as our RUC advisor for the last several years. His insight and experience and abilities, as well as his energy, have done a great deal for all of you in ways you can't imagine on the reimbursement side. He'll be treasurer for 2 years. Zoe Deol is nominated as board secretary. And Zoe has been very involved. She's co-chair of the VLM Specialty Work Group. She's chair of the AVLS Membership Standing Committee, and she served on the our board a short period of time, but she's been very involved with the board members on our various projects. Jeff Schoonover has been nominated to be a new board member. He is very active in Indiana, runs a large practice. He's served on the Foundation for Venous Lymphatic Disease and the AVLM board. He's co-chair of the VLM Specialty Work Group. So Jeff has put a great deal into the society over the years, and he will put in a great deal more as he rotates on the board. This group have been asked to serve an additional 2-year term. Our board is, for the most part, staggered with 2-year terms. And this group is up for renewal or not, but you'll be voting on these. You can see a barcode, a QR code on your screen. You can use that to scan to vote, or you can vote with emails that you're getting from the society. I've served 10 years on the board. I expect to serve 2 more years if I'm elected to do so. As I pass off the baton to the other leadership, I must tell you that I'm very impressed with the people that we have in leadership. We've got a great organization of great people. And it's really a matter of developing our membership and helping those who are very interested in the needs of our patients in our society to do the committee work, and through the committee work, get known. And those who are really performers and who can see their way clear to devote a lot to the society will rise to the board level. These are some of those. The board has recommended these for additional 2-year terms. Thank you. That's the end of the secretary report. I'll go on with the healthcare policy and advocacy report. This is a scary slide. On the left is 2006, and on the right is proposed Medicare payment for 2023 for Part B Medicare. If you look at this, family practice and primary care are up here on the upper right, and societies, specialties that do the kind of work we do for the most part are down here: vascular surgery, interventional radiology, diagnostic radiology. If we had a line for venous lymphatic medicine, it would probably go down here a lot further below diagnostic radiology, particularly since the clinical labor update cuts that started their phase in this year. But this tells you what's been going on. CMS has been working hard to push money toward primary care, but the pie since 2011 has not gotten bigger. There's been virtually no increase in the size of the Part B Medicare dollars that go into care, in spite of more patients, more complex care, more procedures being done in the office. And to fund this, it means that every relative value unit gets paid less, and that's where the conversion factor comes in to reduce what you get paid for each RVU. And CMS has been systematically devaluing procedures and adding more value to evaluation and management services. And that accounts for a lot of this disparity among specialties and these lines that are going the wrong direction. So in summer of 2021, CMS issued their proposed clinical labor update payment cuts. We mounted a strong response, as did the other societies that are severely affected by this. What it resulted in was CMS phasing these cuts in over 4 years rather than doing it all at once. And I think they kind of planned it that way in the first place. There are other cuts that have been issued: the conversion factor cut, the pay-go and sequestration cuts. And Congress intervenes on those some, but every year it's a battle. All of medicine is pushing back on the conversion factor, pay-go, and sequestration cuts, but it's a small number of us that are pushing back on the clinical labor update cuts. For calendar year 2021, we responded to their proposals with comments that did end up with us getting some improvement in the supply inputs from what CMS had proposed. We had another issue recently. The AMA Relative Value Update Committee periodically revalues codes, and they have a complex process by which they choose which codes they're going to study and revalue. And we were up in April at the RUC for potentially being forced into revaluation of all of the main codes in the near future. Dr. Blebea presented a very cogent argument with support from the other societies at the RUC that the RUC actually agreed with, and they delayed major revaluation of the superficial vein codes for 3 years. So we view that as a major win, because virtually every time there's a revaluation of codes, they find a way to cut payment. And there's a venous ulcer task force led by Dr. Schul, working to bring attention to venous ulcer issues and inadequacy and insufficiency of care that's a common problem around the country. They have much to do, and there are many places to impact on this, one of which is the LCDs from Medicare contractors. We're trying to have some influence in requiring reasonable venous evaluation of patients who have supposed venous leg ulcers before they have a lot of money spent on complex skin care. The UpToDate project is ongoing. We at AVLS are working with UpToDate to try to create a policy for their subscription service regarding wound care and venous evaluation prior to other treatment. CMS rule for 2023 was published in July. The deadline for submitting comments was yesterday. Robert White submitted our comments. We're partnering with other interested societies, the SVS, SIR, the renal physicians, oncology physicians, who are some of the most impacted by the clinical labor update. There will be a Capitol Hill virtual lobbying day led by the United Specialists for Patient Access on September 13th. Several of us are participating in that. We'll be on Zoom calls with our legislators discussing the issues. We really have to find a Capitol Hill champion if we're going to change anything. Certainly all of medicine's trying to change the big issue, which is the Balanced Budget Act of 2011, which limits the size of the Part B Medicare pie. But then we have the distribution of dollars within that, which is, in our view, grossly unfair. In November, we expect CMS to publish their final rule for 2023. We don't think there's any real chance that CMS will change anything. It will take congressional action to change what's happening with clinical labor update and the way they're paying us less than our cost for supplies and devices. There likely will be some action on the conversion factor to prevent it from being as bad as many think. This is something many of you have seen. This was a projection out of Baylor University that looked at what the effect of the clinical labor update cuts would be on us if they all took effect in 2022 compared to a hospital outpatient department. You can see that the physician office in Part B Medicare would be paid a great deal less than hospital outpatient departments for the same work. Baylor also looked at the point at which it would cost the federal government more because of shifting of services to the hospital outpatient department. And while it varies from CPT to CPT, it was about an 18% shift that would then cost the federal government more money. I think that will happen. It won't be immediate, but it's already starting to happen. Braid Forbes Healthcare Research did a study that we commissioned with the dollars that many of you contributed. We looked at total Medicare allowable payments for the NPIs that constitute our society members, and they showed a substantial reduction, about 16% in total Medicare payment for the superficial vein codes that are important to us. And of course, the real issue is the clinical labor update being utilized to fund clinical labor out of our supplies and devices that we use, essentially cost shifting within the Medicare Part B. But the big gorilla in the room is the budget neutrality imposed by Congress 11 years ago. We must get that changed if we're going to stay in business. Inflation is going to put us all out of business if we don't get this changed. I think all of Part B Medicare and medicine sees that. It takes time and money to deal with this. And member engagement of your congressional delegation is really key. And so we need you to educate yourself about this and to get out there and talk to Congress. Thank you very much. It's been a privilege to serve these 10 years.
Thank you for your service, Stephen, and thank you for that report. We'll miss you. Our next report is by Dr. John Blebea, who's going to get the research report.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me get started here, and hopefully I find the right. I don't want to bother you with everything else that's on my screen here, but Stephen has given us quite a background and a lot of information, which is obviously very key and not exactly rousing introduction for my presentation, but allow me to go ahead and bring an update to everyone in terms of the registry and the research that's come from it. So Dr. Meissner has already spoken a little bit about the research that's on board, but the registry is a critical one for us and one that's very helpful and should be very productive for us going forward because it has a large amount of information. As of last week, you can see that we've got over 300,000 patients in the registry with information. The number of duplex ultrasound studies, over 8 million. Then by chemical ablation, we're talking about sclerotherapy, almost 300,000 patients with that. But it's not just interventional procedures, as you see down below, but also more than 200,000 patients' cases that have undergone conservative therapy. So there's a lot of vital clinical information here that can be useful for us as physicians to decide on treatment and ultimately for our patients. The registry is very robust. There are 25 states represented, with the leading state being Maryland and all the way down to South Carolina. And it's very representative overall. Here I'll just show the distribution by age and gender, but as you can see, this is a nice bell-shaped distribution, indicating that we've got a very representative set of data and information here. So what have we done during this past year with the registry, and how has this been productive? Well, in terms of research and research publications, many of you on the call participated in the survey of 165 members of the AVLS and OEIS to really question the effect of COVID and, more importantly, the changes in Medicare reimbursement that Dr. Daugherty was just talking about a few minutes ago. More details will be presented at the annual Congress, but one of the striking things that came out of this study was that 1/4 of physicians expect to sell their practice or retire in the next 2 years. And that's huge because we already have an insufficient number of venous specialists to take care of these patients. And I'm happy to say that the full manuscript has been accepted for publication in the Journal of Vascular Surgery, Venous and Lymphatic Diseases. Doctors Schul, Marlin, and Keaton have looked at the prevalence of surgically correctable venous reflux using the registry. So within the registry, there were almost 2,000 patients that presented with leg ulcers. And one of the things that they found were that 85% of these leg ulcers had a venous origin, And even more importantly, 97% had correctable superficial reflux disease, underlying the fact that patients with leg ulcers need to be evaluated for venous disease. And when they are, a very large majority of them can be helped. Again, the details will be presented by them at the annual Congress coming up, and they've already submitted their manuscript for publication. Ambulatory phlebectomy has been a focus of a task force for the past 2.5 years. A summary review of some of those findings are going to be presented in the next issue of Vein magazine, which, as many of you know, has become the official magazine of AVLS. But phlebectomy is very important. As you can tell here, just in Medicare alone, over 28,000 procedures, and the total number is probably 3 times that number across the board. Our research utilizing the registry is now looking and doing an analysis of almost 90,000 procedures. And that is very much a work in progress, but there's a lot of information there to be gained. And part of the questions and one of the reasons that we took a look at phlebectomy was that, as all of us know, one is paid by the number of incisions that are made. And that's really questionable whether both the way we should report this procedure and reimbursement is based just on the number of sites that one makes an incision, because some people make a very small, quick incision. Other people, through the same type of incision, spend a lot of time excising and removing a large length of the vein. So in order to better answer the question whether looking at a different way of reimbursement by looking at specific zones in the leg, a mobile app was developed. So far, about 1,200 cases have been reported in indicating specifically where and how many incisions were made for what type of disease. And those details as well will be presented at the upcoming annual Congress. There are quite a number of additional research projects that we want to do. A major forward step was made several months ago when we contracted with a new group for statistical analysis and support, which will be able to give us much more robust extraction of data and analysis of data from the registry. There's quite a number of ideas that we have, but we need researchers to undertake some of these additional projects, which includes looking at the epidemiology of venous disease, the use of erythema for recurrent disease, thrombotic complications, comparing thermal and non-thermal techniques, as well as regional differences in the treatment and adjunctive treatments prior to ablation. So if anyone in the audience is interested in participating, please don't hesitate to contact either myself or Mr. Michael Thompson, who's our Director of Research. So thank you for your attention. Certainly, I'll be happy to answer any questions later on. And with that, I think I turn the stage over to Dr. Steve Elias, who's going to be talking to us and presenting us the education report. Take it away, Steve.
All right, guys, let me share my screen here. Let's see if I can make this happen. Maybe yes, maybe no. Yeah, all right. Hang on. All right, same question that everybody's asking. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, first of all, John, thanks a lot. Talked about our educational programs and what we've done here. We all know the 3 pillars of what we are. And we're going to talk to just summarize what happened last year at our annual meeting. You can see we had a fair number of people in person, a lot of virtual, and a fair number of exhibitors came as well. Just to remind you about some of the other educational things that we've done the review courses this year in June, both in venous and lymphatic medicine, the PHS course, as well as the sclerotherapy courses, and these are both in person and virtual. The webinars this is the webinars that we've had here. Really, there was, as Mark said, we had, if you can count these, almost 11 of them. And you can look at the topics as well. They really were pretty well attended. And a lot of them really address issues that we don't deal with, all the time, but really helped us understand some of these issues that we don't deal with all the time. Such as understanding the glycocalyx, for example, or lymphedema surgery, which really was a really good one. This e-pass that you can see up here is this on-demand education that allows people with one fee to be able to access all of the various educational opportunities that we've been offering on an on-demand basis, which has really been pretty popular. And as Satish said earlier, a lot of the monies that have come into us have been from the educational courses that have been going on this past year. There's a collaborative program between AVF and AVLS with the Venus classification workbooks that was really also supported by a grant from Medtronic as well. And these allow our our members to really access both of these and get experience in how you classify various patients with both pelvic disease and venous disease, and they can earn CMEs as well. And this is really becoming a really good thing, especially for people who are entering the space so they get comfortable, and there are apps for both of these. Immersive education has been growing. We started out with the sclerotherapy course, and we already now have a second edition of that course headed by Margaret Mann, and we're also introducing a immersive course with Vinay Satwa for introduction to venous insufficiency as well. And more is coming with Michael Diorio launching a course also in terms of thermal ablation. So we have a lot of progressive new things coming on rather than just the traditional educational experience. I'm not going to talk much about this because Chris Pittman's going to bring us up to date as to where we stand regarding our upcoming annual meeting. And then Kathy Gibson will let us know about 2023 and our UIP World Congress as well. So that's about it, except that we are undergoing our accreditation again, and we hope to be reaccredited by ACCME in the coming year. And we want to achieve accreditation with what's called the commendation, and that will allow us to receive a 6-year accreditation. So we're well on our way to be able to offer all this continuing medical education as we've done for many, many years. I believe that is it. I mean, as we all know, education is where AVLS, or whatever we called it before, was started with, and we branched out into other things. But education continues to grow as well and stay within the 21st century. So thank you. And let me unshare my screen.
And we'll go back to Zoe now, who will update everybody about the VLM work group.
Okay, perfect. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so I'll go through this and we'll just do a quick review of how and why the VLM work group got started. We started because of our patients and all of the different treatment options based on prior training from the different specialties led to a little bit of a disjointed or confused outcome there with the patient. So our care has been disjointed and fractionated. And I would encourage you all to read the article by Erin Murphy that was just recently published in Endovascular Today in the July edition on this. It's a very good article, but it just backs up why we need this VLM work group.
Zoe,
Well, yeah.
Excuse me a second. You may want to go to presentation mode. Just
Ooh. that better?
Have some great animations.
Did you get it?
Click slideshow.
Oh, sorry. Got it?
Perfect.
Okay. So another call to action, you just saw or heard John Blebea talk about the decrease in workforce. There was also a 2021 post-COVID Mayo Clinic study that found 1 in 3 physicians, APPs, and nurses intend to reduce work hours due to COVID-related challenges, and 1 in 5 physicians and 2 in 5 nurses intended to leave practice altogether. And in 2021, Coleman also and their partners surveyed members of the Society of Vascular Surgery and found that their specialty was particularly vulnerable to physician burnout, with the second highest rate of burnout among all surgical specialties, leading to depression, high turnover, and early retirement. You also saw some of this in the numbers in the membership report, where I showed that we had a drop in our established physician membership. Another call to action, many of you are familiar with the recent recall of the Boston Scientific Vici stent, and looking at the reasons why the stents migrate or move from where they're initially implanted. 17 complaints and reported injuries led to that recall. So why is this happening? Why does it matter to you and everybody on this call? With disjointed care and no standardized physician training, it leads to poor patient outcomes, and that has an effect on our industry partners. Also, the venous disease does not have a voice in reimbursement, as both Stephen and John had just mentioned. We don't have a standing as a specialty in the eyes of CMS. And as a result, our reimbursement issues are usually grouped under specialties like vascular surgery, where most procedures are not venous. And so the reimbursement issues may be different, yet they're categorized the same. So this has an effect on you, on our physicians, and their ability to maintain their practice and stay in practice. Some insurance carriers even limit access to vein care by restricting reimbursement to specific specialties. Despite that, there's no true venous specialty. So there's just an ad hoc designation of usually 3 specialties: vascular surgery, interventional radiology, and cardiology being the 3 that are singled out as qualified to treat venous disease, without any evidence behind that based on the residency training programs and program requirements of those specialties. So the goals of our work group were to define the specialty through the American Board of Medical Specialties, standardize the education and training to be inclusive of all the components of the various specialties that currently practice, to grow our ACGME accredited fellowship programs, to widen access to quality care for all venous and lymphatic patients, with 250 million patients suffering, and the physician depleted workforce. That's, something that we really have to think about. We also need to improve our outcomes with a broader scope and breadth of care for VLM patients, and inform third-party payers of the validity of this specialty and stop the ad hoc policy exclusions for certain specialties. We also need to have a voice at CMS, which is distinctly different from the other specialties, serving a distinctly different patient population. And a reasonable timeline for this, we felt, was no more than 5 years to complete those goals and to obtain 20 or more VLM fellowship programs by then. As mentioned before, I co-chair this group with Jeff Schoonover, and you've seen these slides before. These are our leadership group members. We also have the executive societies, society executive representation, and the 2 newest additions would be Robert Kirshner, the VP-elect of the AAD, the American Academy of Dermatology, and most recently, Dr. Sunil Rao, president of SCI. Our advisors, ABMS advisors, Tom Granatier, Carrie Radbaugh, and Greg O'Grinick. And then our primary board advisors, Robbie Shear from ABS, Brent Wagoner, and John Kaufman from the ABR. And our writing group, which is separate from our leadership group, contains many of the same members, with the addition of the distinguished Robert Adoran. He is the director of interventional cardiology at Yale. We also have Julianne Stoughton from Mass General, a member of AVLS and AVF. We have Andrew Jones, a general surgeon from Bend, Oregon, Timothy Straight, dermatology. And we have Kathy Gibson, Stephen Daugherty, also with Joanne Lohr from AVF, and most recently, Jay Granzow, who hopefully some of you saw his AVLS webinar. He's a plastic surgeon who specializes in surgery for lymphedema and lipedema, so he's a very valuable asset to this group. Our ACGM advisor to the work group, I'm just going to have a couple quotes from these advisors. Lynn Kirk is the Chief Accreditation Officer at ACGME, and in a conversation I had with her, she stated that ACGME applications are given much more consideration if they already received an ABMS specialty recognition. Without recognition from ABMS, the application has difficulty moving forward. And this was one of the sticking points, I believe, when SBM was trying to get their vascular medicine accreditation. With a recent meeting with Joe Beiske, President and CEO of the American Board of Surgery, Mark and I had a call with her, and she stated that the American Board of Surgery will not be proceeding with any further FPDs for any of the surgical specialties, including the Vascular Surgery Board. She stated the ones they have currently are low yield, expensive, and labor intensive. With their members being volunteers, it is too much to ask for a low yield. And we also recently had a meeting with Richard Hawkins, the president and CEO of the American Board of Medical Specialties. He was very open and interested in listening to our group and to moving the ABMS into the future. He recognizes the practice plasticity and is open to new ideas in medical subspecialization. He's also looking at our VLM workgroup project as an example of a potential path forward for not just us, but other specialties. And he made an investment in our group by offering to gather the boards together to discuss our projects, including ABS, ABR, ABIM, and the American Board of Dermatology. So where are we right now with the progress of our group? Our writing group is in the final stages of our writing the core document, and we are currently comparing our core document with the UIP phobology training document. We also have Julianne Stoughton, who will be presenting our VLM workgroup progress with the UIP and have already received some feedback with support from the UIP. We'll be distributing our VLM core document for endorsements from the various societies, AVF, SIR, SCI, AAD, and SVM. And we plan to submit it for co-publication, hopefully by Journal of Vascular Surgery and Journal of Interventional Radiology. At the same time, we are about a quarter to almost a halfway through working on the VLM program requirements. This is obviously a much more laborious task. We're looking at a multi-tiered training approach for the different levels of specialties as they enter at different levels of prior training. We will also plan to publish that document once it's completed. Additional publications, I have my article accepted by the JVS titled United State of Venous and Lymphatic Medicine, Uniting the Specialties to Form a More Perfect Union. That is slated for target for November 2022 to come out. And then we also have Robert Adoran and Jeff Carr finalizing their article on this to include our work in the group for their SCI journal. So where is AVLS in this call to action? Looking at our great expectations, goals, and objectives from 2023 to 2027. Our society looks towards the future of the next 5 years, and we see a clear goal now to establish a goal that we've had for over 15 years, which is to complete the work needed to achieve specialty recognition of venous and lymphatic medicine by the ABMS. With the support of AVLS and the FVLD leadership, as well as you, our members, committed membership, and the partnership of our companies that have invested in the field of venous and lymphatic medicine, we're committed to the initiatives and the investments to achieve our vision and be recognized as a subspecialty. And how are we going to do that? The next essential investment for the society is to expand our VLM fellowship program to somewhere between 15 to 25 programs across the US. Within the next 5 years, we currently have 7 programs that are active. where AVLS is going to reclaim the oversight of the VLM fellowship program from the ABVLM. However, ABVLM will remain separate from AVLS and retain control over the certification exam and the maintenance of certification, the MOPE program. You heard about the standing committee, the AVLS standing committee for fellowship development. And AVLS will hire a full-time fellowship program director to support the society in our programs, program development and recruitment efforts, as well as oversight and accreditation. So again, our goal is to develop 15, minimum of 15, but hopefully up to 25 programs over the next 5 years. So dodging the roadblocks, the resistance from those who fear being disenfranchised, we are definitely sensitive to that and are going to include a grandfather pathway for our current VLM specialists, which may include simply being board certified by the ABVLM. Resistance from other specialties such as vascular surgery, that's been an ongoing diplomatic effort, and I feel that we make constant progress on that regard. Feel very optimistic, and we've had very good cooperation from the AVF and definite communication with the SVS. So I remain cautiously optimistic on that and hope to have full cooperation with everybody working together as this project advances. And with that, I love saying this at the end, but Jeff Schoonover, my co-chair, says this is like herding cats. And I say, yeah, it's definitely like herding cats, but it's becoming a beautiful cat. So if anyone has any questions with that, I will end my talk and stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Zoe. Dean, can you hear me? I lost my audio for a minute.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Zoe. A lot of work by that group and a lot of progress. And we'll talk a little bit more about how this all plays into the strategic plan in just a minute. But next we have Dr. Chris Pittman, who's going to give the 2022 annual Congress update. Chris.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
So I am trying to share my screen and I might be sharing someone else's screen. Anyway, I just have to say that was super impressive. Zoe, I was exhausted after all that, but that is incredible work.
Thank you.
On behalf of your committee, I mean, in all honesty, that is just great,
Teamwork.
great stuff. Great stuff. Anyway, let me try to make this look a little bit better. Anyway, I got the fun talk, I think. New Orleans, everybody's got to be there, right? It's going to be a lot of fun. The program chairs are doing what they need to do, getting everything on time. Joyce King's very happy. So is Dean Bender, but we would love to get a few more people there. I think we're up a little year over year. We're 2 years post-pandemic, and it's time we all come together in New Orleans. This is our program chairs. We've got representation internationally. We've got great representation on the advocacy side. Something we're doing a little different this year is we're going to pepper every program with a little bit of advocacy and a little bit of international. I'll just leave it at that. Some of the highlights, Tracy Callahan, professional beach volleyball player and venous disease patient, will be sharing her story. I believe Dean's got her grand marshaling a number of events. There'll be Danny Carroll, president of the Space Surgical Society, David Klabonis is chief operating officer of the most successful accountable care organization in the country out of over 500. And he'll be talking to us a little bit about value-based care, which is the sea change going from fee-for-service to fee-for-value medicine. Dr. Reddy is a member of AVLS. Got to know him very well about a year ago. He's very politically connected. He was instrumental, really, in our efforts last year in advocacy, trying to move the needle on clinical labor update. We'll be hearing from him. Raphael Schneider is a fellowship-trained neuromuscular neurologist who has some really interesting things to share with us about the intersection of neurology, neuropathy, and venous disease. And then Scott Smith from NASA. Of course, we're going to have the most comprehensive program in venous and lymphatic medicine. That goes without saying. AVLS Space Forum. Dean, you want to? We're going to have Dr. Mark Nealon, who is incredibly informed on wound care. I had an interesting conversation with him recently, and excellent speaker. And of course, Dr. Heather Hetrick. Dean, you want to add anything to that?
No, just it's going to be a follow-up event to last year. A lot of research is going on low Earth orbits and the effect on edema and edema management. And there's a lot that we can apply to what and how you're going to be managing patients somewhere in the near future.
Veins in space, I love it. Okay, new member welcome reception. Of course, that's always nice, and I'm sure it's going to be very nice down there in New Orleans. Of course, we're going to have an incredible event right on Bourbon Street in the safety of a second floor for those who don't want to venture out into Bourbon Street. So it'll be a nice protected area, second floor, looking over Bourbon Street. It sounds like a lot of fun, and we are certainly looking forward to that. Event sponsors, CBR and USA. This is our Congress event schedule. I don't think I'll spend too much time on that. That's available, of course, on the web. And we got a number of satellite symposiums. Again, really a full Congress with satellite symposiums, lectures. And look at that innovation pavilion. That is a lot of exhibitors. Great to see we're kind of back in the swing of things and put this virus stuff behind us. Venous and Lymphatic Village. That's going to be interesting. I think that was done a couple of years ago, where industry basically no holds barred on Sunday morning, basically shows and demonstrates their wares. CME be darned. And it's an interesting show and tell opportunity. Dean, if you want to add to this, you can, but this is our total attendees, I think, to date. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is as of 10 a.m. this morning, thereabouts. We are ahead of where we were final for Denver. So as you mentioned previously, Chris, we are trending ahead of where we were a year ago. So that's an improvement, and we're still about 4 or 5 weeks out. So
that's awesome. Everybody on the call, your leaders, if you're on this call, whether you're a panelist or not, please let's get at least one more person out to New Orleans if you've never been there before. Of course, it's something not to miss, and if you have been there before, you're going to want to go back again. And that's it. We hope to see all you guys down in New Orleans for veins and all that jazz. Take it away, Mark and Dean.
Thanks, Chris. Something to really look forward to. I'm excited about it, and equally excited about our 2023 meeting, which is going to not only be the AVLS meeting, but it's going to be a UIP World Congress, where we're going to welcome the world to our meeting and have it in conjunction with the UIP. And Dr. Kathleen Gibson, who's president-elect of the AVLS and will be president of that meeting, is going to give us an update on that now. Kathy?
Yeah, thank you. I am also very excited about going to the New Orleans meeting. So give me a second. I'm trying to share my screen and it is not being very helpful. Let's see here. I may have to log in on my different computer. This computer's blocking me. I really apologize.
Kathy, I can pull this
You
up.
want to do
and
it?
do it for you?
Yeah. So this one's wanting me to update my security privileges because I'm on a different computer than I usually am. So if you can do that, that'd be great. And I'll just tell you next slide, That'd be great. If you want to share it.
On my way.
So I'm very excited about this meeting, and I also am very pleased with the team of AVLS putting together this very beautiful presentation. So thanks to everyone at AVLS for making this presentation look so good. There's a little embedded video. So as Mark said, this is going to be a international meeting, and if we play the sound, and let's take this away with the video. Can you play the sound with that?
My name is Mark Meissner, President of the American Vein and Lymphatic Society and General Secretary of the International Union of Phlebology. On behalf of both organizations, as well as our partner societies in North America, including the American Venous Forum, the Canadian Society of Phlebology, and the Mexican Association of Phlebology and Lymphology, I'd like to welcome all of you to the 20th World Congress of the International Union of Phlebology.
We'll be covering topics such as deep venous disease, pelvic venous disease, superficial venous disease, lymphedema, and wound care.
We can expect a very deep scientific program under the direction of the program chairs, John Blebea and Alan Davies, that will cover the entire spectrum of venous disease from superficial venous interventions to deep and pelvic interventions. In addition to a chance to connect with our colleagues from phlebology around the world, I think you'll enjoy visiting Miami Beach to spend time with family, as well as the many cultural resources of Miami Beach. I look forward to seeing you all there.
With this UIP meeting, we'll be connecting the continent and welcoming the world.
Okay, so that is our promotional video. And next slide. So I'm the Congress president, but the two scientific chairs, we have a North American representative in John Blebea, who's been working with Alan Davies, and they're co-scientific chairs. Alan kind of are giving more of an international approach. And then this is our organizing committee. So we have Sergio Giannassini, we've got Jeff Schoonover, Glenn Jacobowitz from the American Venous Forum. From Canada, we have Pauline Raymond Martinbieu. And then from Mexico, we have Javier Gallegos. I hope I didn't ruin his name. But again, this is an international meeting, but the AVLS is really kind of spearheading it. We're enjoying the collaboration with all these other societies helping. Some highlights of this program. Now, there's going to be more and more added, because again, this is over a year away, but we're having a space forum. We're in Florida, and we're having just like in New Orleans, a forum with some space medicine, International Compression Club, meeting experts from around the world. Each of the international societies will be invited to have a room, a space, and develop a small program of their own. So I think that that's going to be really interesting to go and see. There's satellite symposiums, more on research, and a comprehensive scientific and educational program covering all of the topics that you see here, and maybe more upcoming. There's lots of fun social events. Of course, we're in Miami after all, including opening ceremonies, welcome dinner and party, and happy hours, a Women in Phlebology breakfast, and the Sunset Gala is also going to be a wonderful place. We are having events both at the Convention Center, which is large and lovely if you've ever seen it in Miami, as well as some events at the host hotel. And then there'll also be closing ceremonies. So again, we are doing this as a North American meeting, and we are hoping you'll all come. Not only invite your friends from the United States, but your friends in international phlebology practice and vein practices, because I think this is going to be a really super fun meeting and very educational. Thanks for playing that.
Thanks, Kathy. And it's going to be a really great meeting. I don't know if how many have been to a UIP meeting before, but it is really an event that you can't miss. And particularly with the AVLS hosting it, it should be just a really great meeting. And now we'll move on to Dr. Marlin Schul, who will give the Foundation for Venous and Lymphatic Disease report. Marlin.
Thank you, Mark, and great session tonight. And by all means, I want to thank everybody who's shown up in attendance today. Dean, would you be so kind as to start my slides, please? This is a summary of the FVLD's activities over the last year. Next slide, please. As you can see, based upon the activity that you heard this evening, whether it's advocacy, research, or education, the Society has been working extra hard to provide extra opportunities to funnel funds toward battling issues that we're facing. And without going into any more detail, next slide. Many thanks to the sponsors. This list is extensive. What it doesn't show is the individual members who also sacrifice their own resources. And so I wish to thank all of those who paid attention to the needs of our last campaign and for sharing their resources as we push toward common goals. Next slide, please. As we face our annual Congress, there's a Congress expedition instead of a golf event on the pre-Congress day. This will have professional tour guides to take small groups throughout New Orleans. And I'm personally looking forward to this. I will be looking for the one that has anticipated pub crawl as part of its title. Sorry, but that's a disclosure. And then when it comes to the fun run and the walk for Mel, for the last couple of years, we've actually had people that have been unable to attend Congress, whether it be for business reasons or whether it be because of pandemic, that have actually held their own events on the same day. And I would encourage everybody who's able to participate in the fun run and walk. And then with the silent auction, just to give the attendees an opportunity to see, if you can see the picture where I'm at, I've got a picture here, a painting of a leg that looks like a tree with veins all over it. It's a beautiful addition to any office. So I hope you'll consider participation in all of not just the Congress, but all the activities that we have to share. Next slide. I need to thank our board of directors. We've had an amazing crew, not only on the board of the society, but also on the board of the foundation. And I think that needs to be recognized. And I wish to personally thank all of those contributions. And really, that's the end of my report. And I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Marlin. Well, we're almost on time. I'm going to share my screen now. My slides look okay, Dean?
Yes, sir.
We've heard a lot of really great and exciting things tonight, and I hope everybody is excited about what's coming up in the next year or so. And what I'm going to talk about now is the AVLS strategic plan going forward. And this will cover the next 5 years beginning in 2023. And I think there's a lot of exciting things in this. If we go back to what our mission is, it's to advance venous and lymphatic care. And our vision is to be an indispensable voice and resource for our members, to be a powerful advocate for excellence in venous and lymphatic disease. And hopefully everything you've heard today reinforces that. To be a leader in basic and clinical science research. And I think we've made substantial progress in that over the last 5 years, where we really are a substantial voice in research, and to be a leader in physician and patient identification, knowledge exchange, and practice growth. So I think we've heard a lot about what we're doing in the last year, but I think it's important, probably the most important thing to me as a member of the AVLS is what makes us different than the other medical societies and several societies I belong to. Probably most important is this collaborative multidisciplinary membership with a shared vision where we share knowledge, we share our own expertise, and our goals are simply, the only agenda is to move the field forward. We have a committed tenured leadership. It's not a leadership that changes every year or two. The executive committee, by the time you're president and past president, requires a minimum of a 12-year leadership commitment. And leadership is based on commitment to the AVLS. It's not based on academic credentials. It's just what you do for our members and for our group. And I think that clearly sets us apart, where it's just not based on what you've achieved academically with the leadership. And probably most importantly is our agenda is based on a vetted 5-year strategic plan, which is what we're going to talk about in a minute. And really the executive committee's job is not to change the agenda every year, it's to shepherd the strategic plan. That's all of our jobs. We're not creating a new agenda with each incoming president, as you see in many medical societies, but really our only goal as the executive committee is to shepherd the strategic plan and make sure that we achieve. If you looked at our strategic plan since 2005, we clearly have a track record of success, and I have no doubts that the Great Expectations strategic plan will be equally successful. In 2005, we established the foundation as well as all of the framework for the American Board of Venous and Lymphatic Medicine and credentialing and certification in venous and lymphatic medicine. In 2011, committed to research in venous disease, and under Marlin established the Pro Registry. 2017, our latest strategic plan really focused on advocacy, research, and education. And our next milestone is going to be the Great Expectations Strategic Plan, which will be launched at Congress this year. If you look at the New Horizons plan, we came up with this catchphrase, we are advocacy, research, and education. And we've heard a lot about what we've achieved in each of these areas over the last 5 years. And I'm going to go through the next slides very quickly because it's mostly been covered. As far as advocacy goes, I think the critical part is we built a really effective infrastructure for effective advocacy with Robert White, who is just an awesome addition to the AVLS as a full-time advocacy director, established a board-level advocacy and health policy committee with representation in the AMA, most importantly on the CPT and RUC committees, and we built relationships with other societies that we have a common interest in. If you look at some of the things that have been done over the last few years in response to a 30% cut in phlebectomy, John and Ken Harper have led the phlebectomy task force, and you've heard a lot about some of the research that's being done in that on just how much work we do with phlebectomy, and hopefully will be a better representation of how we ought to be paid. With CMS, we had a multidimensional strategy to address the clinical labor update and practice expense components, as Stephen talked about previously. We worked with payers to effectively lobby for changes to existing local coverage determinations. And we lobbied Congress as executive members of the United Specialists for Patient Access. And I think if we have so many achievements to talk about over the 5 years, but this is really something that's gone from 0 to 100 in 5 years. And we really have the infrastructure now to be able to accomplish things for our members in advocacy. As far as research goes, we heard about the 300,000 patients who are in the Pro Registry and starting to see the fruits of that. A year and a half ago, we published the SVP classification for pelvic venous disorders and led an international group of experts in coming up with this that was published in June of last year in the JVS. As far as guidelines go, as I mentioned, I'm excited to announce that the first update of the guidelines will be published online probably in the next 2 weeks or so. And the supplement to that, which will be a little bit wider ranging, perhaps not so evidence-based just because there isn't so much evidence for some of it, will be, I think, finished probably by winter of 2023. John Fish is leading the lymphedema group and have developed all of the questions that are going to be answered and are just starting to look through the systematic reviews. And we'll expect that also out in 2023. We've also developed questions for pelvic venous disorders and venous stenting that hopefully will continue to progress on in the next year. The phlebectomy app, which I think is really a wonderful research tool that I think is unique to the AVLS. It's a mobile phone-based app, and it's designed to answer very focused research questions. It's not like a registry where you just collect all of the data that comes in and then ask the questions. The mobile apps are just the opposite. You ask the question, it's very focused, and you accumulate data in very little time, and it only requires the phlebectomy app itself requires less than probably about 90 seconds to fill it out for each patient. And as John mentioned, it'll be presented at the annual Congress, and we have over 1,300 procedures in it now. And I think this is a model for our research going forward for very, very focused questions. It's kind of a complement to the registry that takes a little bit different tack than the registry does itself. And we've had a number of publications that have been already discussed from the AVLS over the past year. And I think we can be very proud of what we've accomplished in research as part of the strategic plan. And lastly, education. Steve covered this. Our Congress last year was successful. The review courses were successful, and I really have to compliment everybody who's participated in the webinars. I think it's been an outstanding series where we've had webinars almost every month, and I'll continue this hopefully going forward, even post-COVID, and the workbooks. Some of the administrative things that we've accomplished under the strategic plan: we renamed the society from the American College of Phlebology to the American Vein and Lymphatic Society to better reflect our commitment to research and to advocacy beyond just education. And that's been a successful name change. Dean's been hired as the executive director to oversee the New Horizons plan, and Dean has done just an outstanding job in holding this all together. And I have no doubt that he'll continue this with the Great Expectations plan as well. We've hired full-time staff to both lead the Healthcare Policy and Advocacy Committee, as well as with Michael Thompson, a director of research that oversees all of the activities of the research committee, relocated headquarters to Chicago, and we built fairly strong relationships with other societies, including the American Venous Forum, which we've worked very closely with over the last couple of years, the Society for Interventional Radiology, SCI, and OEIS. We now have very strong relationships with all of these. So I think we can say, based on the New Horizons, that the American Vein and Lymphatic Society has delivered upon what the strategic plan was and has accomplished almost everything that was in the strategic plan. So with that, where do we go from here? And that's the Great Expectations. And really, I sort of think of everything we're doing with this advocacy, education, and research as the pathway to specialty recognition. And these are some of the ways that we're going to achieve this with the strategic plan over the next 5 years. As far as education goes, we're already the leader in venous and lymphatic education. Our real goals are to achieve AVMS recognition and ACGME accreditation for our existing fellowships, as well as expanding the fellowships. Initiatives include, number one, we're going to assume oversight and management of the existing fellowship programs, which are currently housed under the AVVLM, and we're going to bring those back in-house into the American Vein and Lymphatic Society, mostly so we can have the resources to expand this, to expand fellow recruitment, increasing high-quality applicants, as well as expand the number of programs over the next several years. And we think we can do this with the dedicated staff that we have at the American Vein and Lymphatic Society, which kind of the volunteer resources at the AVVLM, they've done a great job with it, but we need more help in getting this up and growing and expanding. The investment in this is going to be a full-time fellowship director to both oversee the existing programs, as well as to be responsible for developing and recruiting new programs. And that's what we really need, is a full-time person who's very familiar with the ACGME, who knows how to develop these programs and bring them on board. And we also need an additional $100,000 to $150,000 in grants to help new programs get up and running. And our goals, which I think is a very achievable goal, is to develop a minimum of 15 new academic fellowship programs over the next 5 years. And sort of 15 to 20 is the magic number for the ACGME to consider ACGME accreditation. And I think we can achieve this and excited about achieving this in the next 5 years. As far as research goes, we need to develop the research to support specialty recognition with guidelines, best practices, and health policy. Our initiatives are to increase the output of Pro 2.0 registry projects. Now that we've got the statistics all in place and the data extraction in place, it should be easy to do this. We're going to support really key clinical trials, such as the Embolize trial, looking at the management of pelvic venous reflux. We're going to continue to develop key evidence-based guidelines and develop standards for clinical data collection by all of our members and practitioners, making it simple to do and something that's achievable in practice, so we can sort of standardize what we're collecting and what our outcomes are, and the expanded use of these mobile applications for focused clinical questions and research, as I talked about, which I think is really a great thing that's been developed by the AVLS. I know of no other society that's doing that to really focus our research. To do so, we'll need an additional funding of $50,000 to $75,000 for pro-registry projects. We're going to need investment in clinical trials, as we're doing with the Embolize trial, and for the development of mobile research applications, such as the phlebectomy application, with the goals of producing 8 to 10 registry reports or projects per year and complete the evidence-based guidelines for lymphedema, venous stenting, and pelvic venous disorders. And lastly, for advocacy, to build upon what we've done over the last 5 years, that is putting the AVLS in a leadership position in advocating for our members, our patients, and our specialty on a national level. The initiatives for this are to continue advocacy for VLM through the AMA, CMS, and other payers, and to expand this so that we can provide some individual support or for members who are being challenged in their payment policies and reimbursement by working with individual members with payer policies and coverage managers. To do that, our goal is to expand the health policy department, adding a full-time staff member to help Robert and to really work directly with our members to address these individual problems with payers and policies. And the goals are to expand the resources that we can not only support the specialty as we've been doing for the last 5 years, but also to expand the support that we can provide our members. You know, I think you look at that, these are really big goals. And I think there's nobody probably in our whole society who has come along farther than myself in believing this can happen. We heard from Zoe how much progress has been made with the ABMS, with having audience with Joe Beisky and with Richard Hawkins, who's president of the ABMS. And they realize that changes in the way that we define specialties are needed. And I look forward to them sort of looking at venous and lymphatic medicine as the model for all of medicine about how we move specialties forward. We've been trapped in silos for the past 60 years, which at least have some contribution to physician burnout and so many physicians leaving medicine. The American Board of Medical Specialties understands this. They realize there's a need to change, and this may be the model for how we change all of medicine with this. So we all have to believe this is possible, because certainly there's no one who believes it more than I do. What we need to make this all happen, based upon John Mangold's assessment of both what's available and what this has cost, we need about $5 million in funding from 2023 to 2027. And 1 million of that needs to be from member giving. The rest we'll get from other places, but we need every member to be committed to the future of venous disease and the AVLS. And we've made a great start to date. 88% of the board of directors have made a commitment to the strategic plan for $183,000. 79% of the foundation board of directors have made individual commitments. This isn't commitments from our industrial partners at all. This is individual commitments of $217,000. So we're almost halfway there to that $1 million, at least with the commitments, before this has even been launched. So I really think this is critical, if you believe in the specialty, to participate in this. And I think you need to consider this as an investment in yourself, your patients, and the future of venous and lymphatic disease. It's not just a donation. This is an investment in yourself and your practice. Be happy at this point. I think we'll open it up for any questions about any of our speakers so far. Maybe ask everybody to turn their microphones back on, and we'll take any questions about that.
Mark, Dean here. Very, very well done. No questions out there as of this moment, but I wanted to just take a moment and just say, you know, I think that was a great finish. Believe. And I want to thank all of you, Mark, Kathy, the entire board of both the foundation, the society, the membership. It's been a real joy just to serve all of you. It's exciting what we've accomplished and where we're headed, and I think we've just got great things to come. And I can just see the other side of the bridge. I see it there. with where we're headed. And, you know, I go all the way back to 2004 when this first goal was mentioned of ABMS recognition. And I think with Zoe and Jeff, you know, on the reins, you know, we're close and we're right there. And so it's time to believe, it's time to move forward. And again, just thank you for the opportunity to get to work with all of you great people.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Dean, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. And I look forward to, you know, seeing every one of you who are on the call tonight, as well as many others in New Orleans. We'll go into some more detail on some of this, as well as having an enjoyable time and learning something and advancing venous and lymphatic medicine.
Mark, we had one question come in, and you, when talking about the future guidelines for the varicose veins 2.0 part, you were saying probably the end of 2023. Can you give a little more anticipation of what that means?
Yeah, so that right now, this is again a multidisciplinary group that includes the Society for Vascular Surgery and the American Venous Forum. These are combined guidelines of all societies. The first version of the guidelines were the 1.0, are very evidence-based guidelines. They're designed so that they have to strictly follow the grade criteria, the rule of evidence. There has to be a meta-analysis for every question that's performed. And as a result, just because where we are in venous disease now is fairly limited in scope. It's limited to only those questions that really have a lot of evidence to support them. And they'll be good guidelines. They'll address things, since the last guidelines, we now have all of the non-tumescent techniques. It's going to address those. It's going to address things such as stage versus concomitant management of tributary varicosities, anything there's a lot of evidence on. Number two, the stage 2 is going to follow a little bit looser program in that there has to be a meta-analysis available for every question that's addressed, but it doesn't have to be performed by our group. It can come from outside sources, and many of the questions there are existing meta-analyses about. It's going to probably address, I believe there's about 12 questions. It's been broken up into 4 groups. 3 of the 4 groups have finished their drafts of what the guidelines are. And right now in monthly conference calls, we go line by line through every one of the recommendations, and they're modified according to group consensus. That probably is going to take another 3 or 4 months to get, but the draft is done. It just needs to be gone through by the group and make sure it's vetted among everybody. So I would anticipate by the time, the timeline I would guess is that the guidelines will probably be finished in early 2023. But by the time it winds its way through the process of getting the societal approvals from the SVS, the AVF, and the AVLS, probably looking at mid-2023 for 2.0.
Very good, thank you. Zoe, we had a question come in. You had kind of mentioned potential resistance from those already in practice who may fear being disenfranchised, and kind of talked about a potential grandfather pathway. Kind of what does that mean? Just to explain a little bit when we talk about grandfathering in.
So grandfathering in for those physicians who are currently practicing now, I think when they hear the idea of VLM certification, they fear that they're going to have to stop practicing, go back into a fellowship program, and then become certified in order to continue practicing. And so grandfathering in is a way to offer a pathway to those who are already practicing prior to establishing a specialty. And that pathway could be something simple as passing the VLM certification board examination and having that be your demonstration of your commitment to the field. However, going forward, once the specialty has been officially ABMS recognized and there is an ACGME accredited fellowship, those physicians that were not practicing prior to that must then go through the fellowship formally and then take the exam. So that's hopefully, does that explain it? Sue?
Yes, I think so. Very
Okay.
good. One other question that's come in, and kind of throw this out for the group, but Zoe may fit as well. And the question becomes regarding training programs. has there been established guidelines regarding what makes a complete program? And I think that's what you're working on now with the core documents and those kinds of things. So maybe just explain a little more in depth.
So the ABVLM had already created guidelines as far as core document and program requirements, which are now being fine-tuned with the input of all the different specialties. Now, program requirements as far as training, there are certain standardized protocols that are there and established for training programs, but when it comes to demonstrating technical expertise, that's where things become a little more complicated. Whereas many programs that currently exist, including interventional radiology and interventional cardiology, there are no minimum numbers required to demonstrate expertise. So when you have a specialty like BLM, where you have so many varied entry points into the specialty with vastly different prior training, when you're talking about a technical training program, our program requirements are going to be more specific so that we can have everybody brought up to the same level and on par. And that's where I was talking about a tiered approach. So you could have somebody, say, from vascular surgery who wants to become VLM certified. They can enter the program with many of the, I guess I'm using a bad bad example there, because vascular surgery doesn't have very many venous cases, if any at all. You can have some technical training that will meet some of those requirements. You may have a vascular surgery program that has a lot of venous training. And so that fellow that enters may have already completed a lot of those cases that would be required. Whereas you have somebody that enters with a family practice program and has no technical experience would have to meet all those requirements. So that's what I'm talking about with a tiered approach.
Very good. And Zoe, and kind of follow up to that as well, another question came in. When we think about superficial disease versus deep, and how we're going to look at certification, I know that's something the work group is addressing as well. Maybe
Exactly. And that's what we were talking about too in the tiered approach. We have a superficial, we have a deep, and then we have a lymphatic. And the lymphatic component, we're still discussing that as far as the surgical approach, but there can be some physicians that choose to just do the superficial as far as the technical side of things, and some that choose to do just deep, and some that choose to do both as far as technical. However, when it comes to the didactics and the core training for the medical knowledge of those systems, all physicians will be required to have the technical knowledge of all aspects, superficial, deep, and lymphatic. That way, if you choose not to practice the technical component of superficial and only do deep, you do understand that component and you do understand the lymphatic component. We even talked about using some of our virtual training for the lymphatic surgical component with the virtual reality to be able to look into an operating room with, say, Jay Granzow and watch him do procedures as part of the fellowship program. Now, with the deep component, that's more complicated. And, again, our work group is actively discussing those criteria for somebody to be able to train to do deep interventions. And that may be somebody that comes from a different background.
So with that, one more follow-up question, it kind of tails on to what you just said, and that is, as we think about developing these fellowship programs that we're looking to invest in and build, do we see potentially many fellowships that maybe, that actual training may focus only on the superficial and then more robust programs, or how do you see that fellowship coming out of residency at that beginning developing?
So the fellowship, when it develops, the core medical knowledge training has to be uniform across the board, or you're going to end up with the same disjointed care of somebody having a narrow focus with blinders on just one aspect of VLM. So the core training across with the medical knowledge has to be uniform. And as far as the technical training, like I said, you can have within that program somebody that chooses to just technically train in superficial, but they still have to have the exposure. I know that's not a great word, but the medical knowledge of the deep system also. So you've got to be able to have some observational experience to understand that, even if you aren't going to be practicing that.
And so we have one last question for the group, kind of as a follow-up. Can the society provide a list of practitioners who are willing to mentor practicing docs to train deep vein intervention? So this becomes quite a challenging question, I think, for the group. And maybe I'll just leave it there. We have an answer.
So I'll leave myself out of that one. I think the mentor-mentee program is a great way to go about at least trying to match yourself up with somebody. But then again, it depends on the mentor, whether they're comfortable, feeling responsible with somebody's training in that manner. So I'll leave that open to anybody that actually does that. So answer.
Great. Well, I think that's it for the questions that I see now, Mark.
Well, with that, thanks everybody for joining tonight. We've been almost 2 hours, but thanks for sticking with it to the end. And I look forward to seeing you all in New Orleans. It's going to be a great meeting and a lot to look forward to. Have a good evening.
All right, everybody. Great night.
See you in New Orleans.
I believe.
Don't be a goldfish, Zoe.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Again, thank you very much for your time.
Bye.